Hello, we have our group here. My name is Robert Zygmunt. I'm one of the 8 post-high school counselors here at New Trier Township High School. As some of you viewers might be aware, we originally planned this session to occur back in February during the school for our class of 2021, and it was postponed due to some possible inclement weather, and then postponed again, obviously with remote learning occurring. But now that we've got our summertime on the way, we traditionally do some summer panel seminars, and we decided to make use of that opportunity to have some guests and friends with us here for a quick panel. So this College Admissions 101 session is a panel discussion. We have representatives from a variety of different kinds of schools here to share not only about their institutions, the unique qualities, but also to go over some frequently asked questions, which I will help moderate, to share information about the college admissions and enrollment process for this rising group of seniors, and to make sure that everyone's feeling really well informed and in understanding of how the process might look from the perspective of different kinds of schools. So without further ado, I'm going to have all of our panelists introduce themselves. We're going to go in order of our panelists. They're going to talk about themselves, their role, a little bit about their institution and what makes their institution unique, and then we'll launch into some of those questions, which I will help moderate. So we'll go into getting that started. Let me change the view here for that, and then we'll go right ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Michelle Brown. I'm Director of Admission and Enrollment at Oakton Community College, and I'm happy to be with everyone tonight, and I'm happy that we're able to do this event virtually since we're not able to do it in person. So special thanks to New Trier for still hosting this and allowing parents the opportunity and information. A little bit about myself. I've been in college admissions for over 30 years, and I've been at Oakton Community College for 19 years. So I have experience in four-year privates, four-year publics, community for quite some time, a lot of work with transfer students. So I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about that. I'm also a parent of 2 college students. So I have one that just finished freshman year and one that just graduated college, and I have a rising high school junior. So I've been through this process a couple times and one still to go. So I understand a lot of the pains, but also the joys that you'll be going through during this process. A little bit about Oakton Community College, if you're not familiar. We are your local community college. We offer over 80 different transfer and career programs for students to engage in. And some of the reasons that I would say that you would want to consider Oakton Community College as an option on your list is that, one, the financial savings and the cost benefits of attending community college is really one of the main reasons a lot of students choose a community college. Even families that have money want to make smart decisions about their money, and a lot of families are deciding to save that money for graduate school and other schooling and starting their college years at the community college to save money. So that's one of the big benefits. A couple other benefits of community college is that we are close to home. So for those of you that want to stay close to family, close to friends, have other responsibilities in your community or in your neighborhoods, you can do that by attending Oakton Community College. And a third benefit and reason a lot of students tell us they like to attend Oakton is a lot of high school students are still exploring their options on what they want to do for a career and for a major in college and what type of institution they want to go to. And so students can do that while they're at a community college. They can take their general education, their first 2 years of credit, and explore kind of what type of field they like, what type of major they want, what type of career they want. And then they can transfer pretty seamlessly to almost all schools in Illinois and many schools across the country. We have a lot of different 2+2 and transfer agreements and dual admission agreements that we share with many colleges and universities that our students engage in. And we have a lot of support services on campus for students to participate in so that they get the true college feeling. It's not a drive over, take class and drive home experience. It is a true college experience with athletics, student life, support services like tutoring and whatnot. So those are some of the things and some of the benefits that we're hearing from students and some of the features that we like to showcase about Oakton. We're celebrating our 50-year anniversary. I have my 50th shirt on today. And so we're really proud of 50 years of serving the community, and we hope that at some point you and your son and daughters will take advantage of Oakton. We also have a lot of students from New Trier that come to Oakton during the summer and take summer classes. So I'll talk a little bit about that later too. So that's Oakton Community College, and I think I will mute and pass it off to the next person.
Awesome. I'm the next person. I'm Grace Chapin James from the University of Chicago. And I have the pure joy of having worked at the University of Chicago for about 10 years and also being an alum of the college here. In my role in higher education and at UChicago, I manage our application reading and review process. So really getting down to the details of what it looks like to be reviewed in a very highly selective application process with us. UChicago is a school with some pretty amazing history. I know some folks have probably heard of us, both being an awesome opportunity within the Chicago area, but as we think about our sort of national presence and international presence, UChicago is a place where the atom was first split, where the mathematical theory behind black holes was first developed, where the person who first discovered that cancer could have a genetic link did so in one of our biology labs. Unless you think that is all in our history, actually, Dr. Janet Rowley, who made that important discovery about cancer, was my introductory genetics professor at the University of Chicago. So this is really what you're getting into thinking about a place like UChicago with this intellectual spirit, being able to work with faculty and among students who are really the absolute best of the best, top of their fields, and really, really, really committed to learning and intellectual development and discovery. We're located in Hyde Park, which is just south of downtown Chicago. I encourage anybody to come drive down to Hyde Park. We're not currently open for tours, but it's a great little drive and very scenic down Lakeshore Drive to come visit us. We're a school that emphasizes two aspects of learning as well. We have a liberal arts philosophy, a core curriculum for all of our undergraduate students. We want our students to feel that you have the opportunity to develop new interests and experience new topics as you enroll in college, but we also want our students to feel that there is value in breadth. So while UChicago is a place where if you are a mathematician or an economist or a historian, you can go absolutely as far as you want in those fields, we also want to make sure that our students leave with a strong understanding of other subjects, the arts, humanities, math and science for our humanists and our social sciences scientists too. That's a really important part of the educational philosophy at UChicago. So it's a great place to come be a cool nerd, as I like to describe myself and many of the students that I have worked with and see on campus. And I'm excited to give you a little bit more of the UChicago perspective throughout this presentation. So I'll pass it on to Michael.
Excellent, thanks, Grace. My name is Mike Cohen. I am Director of Admission and Strategic Development at Lake Forest College, just up the road in Lake Forest. I've been in higher ed for 10 years, most of those in enrollment, about half of those at Lake Forest. I'm also a New Trier alum, so this is special for me to be able to talk to all of you because admittedly, I did not do my junior panel when I was in high school, and I ended up attending one school and transferring, and so we can all think about that as if I had attended my junior panel, that may not have happened. So you have very good advisors and listen to them. So that'll be my plug for the office there. But in my role, I oversee our reading process as well. I'm our athletics liaison, so I work with all of our coaches. We have, with the additions of our men's and women's lacrosse team that will come online for the fall 21 semester, we will have 25 Division III athletic sports, and so I'm a liaison for all of those athletic teams. I also work with all of our recruiters and all of our admissions counselors in the various areas. My area happens to be the North Shore, so any of the students looking at Lake Forest College from New Trier will be working with me throughout their process. We are a small liberal arts college. I always joke with students, if you don't turn around when you get to Lake Cook Road, if you're on Sheridan or Green Bay Road and you keep going north into Lake County, within 15 minutes you'll be at Lake Forest. So we really are up the road. But at the same time, it's a small liberal arts institution with a flexible curriculum that really wants to provide an experience for students that's personalized towards their interests. And so we really see career development as part of that. We understand that in addition to the content knowledge and the goal of knowledge for the betterment of society, there is that pragmatic element of ensuring that you have the content necessary to really enter in the field that you're interested in. We just want you to be able to take the time to figure it out as well. So with our flexible curriculum, many of our students will double major. So even if they end up in business, for example, or finance, they may double major in Spanish because they want to do international business. Or if they're in the sciences, they might do a pre-med curriculum, but they also may major in sociology to think through, for example, with our health professions program, some of the sociological impacts of medicine. So it really is a flexible curriculum that allows students with the opportunity to not only experience some of the things that they're interested in, but to continue to add those as they move forward. We have a 4-year career model. All of our students have career advisors from when they step on campus, and our goal is that they use those all 4 years. And so as a result, our students have an academic advisor who's a professor, they have a career advisor, all 4 years of their experience. It's the type of place where you still have a person for everything that you need. So our goal is that when you're at Lake Forest College, you're always able to find that person, no matter who that is. And so as a result, we're able to deliver a personalized education for our 1,600 students. Our students really do come from all over the world. We have students from 44 states, from 80 different countries. And they come to Lake Forest because not only can they have that smaller educational experience just outside the city, but they can get into the city by heading on the metro, and they can be there within an hour. Our students do up to 3 internships for credit. As I mentioned, the double majors, half of them do that, and many of them are doing their internships for credit towards graduation. So they're able to bring that career element to their liberal arts education. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure that we help students as much as we can throughout this process. And so I'm thrilled to have the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you and be able to start playing that role right now.
Hello, everyone. I am next. I'm Carlene Kloss, Dean of Undergraduate Admission at DePaul University here in Chicago. In my role, I oversee the recruitment and admission of incoming freshmen as well as transfer students. As a university, we enroll approximately 2,500 new freshmen each fall, but almost as many transfer students. So just like Michelle talked about their robust agreements and pathways to 4-year institutions, we're one of those partner institutions. DePaul is the largest Catholic university in the United States. We're also the 14th largest private institution. We have approximately 22,000 students, about 14,000 of which are undergraduate students. We have 2 different campuses located in Chicago, one of which is in my background today, the Lincoln Park campus, which is in a really vibrant social neighborhood, kind of just steps from the lakefront and the Lincoln Park Zoo. And then we also have one that's very intentionally located in the Loop, the business district of the city, just steps from local employers and internships. That's a huge part of what we do, is connect students to the city, to local alumni, to local employers for those internships and full-time positions. So a huge benefit to studying at an urban institution is those connections that you can make. We have over 130 different degree programs at the undergraduate level. We were founded as a liberal arts institution way back in 1898. However, we offer everything from business to computer science to education, communications, music, theater, you name it. There's a whole variety of options. We also like to joke that undecided is our most popular major. So there's a lot of options for students who may still be exploring what it is that you would like to study. We have a number of honors programs for students. We have several pathways programs that are offered in conjunction with Rosalind Franklin University up in the northern suburbs for students wanting to study something in the health professions. We have a BA JD program for the future lawyers out there, and a number of combined degree programs for students who know they want to go on and complete their graduate degree. And those types of programs allow them to complete both a bachelor's and an advanced degree in a shorter window of time. And then finally, the other thing is that we're a teaching institution. Our primary focus is on teaching. It's not to say that our faculty don't do research. They absolutely do. That's a very critical part of their work. However, they're at DePaul and they're hired at DePaul because they love to be in the classroom teaching students. What that means to our students is that they have small class sizes. 99% of our classes are less than 50 students. We don't have teaching assistants. We have only faculty teaching classes. Faculty hold office hours, and our student-faculty ratio is 15:1. So we really have all of the benefits of a large university in terms of the resources and the variety of options, but with that personal touch when it comes to the classroom setting.
Great, thanks, Carlene. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Siegel. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Indiana University, Bloomington, which is a large public research university, about 4 hours from Chicago, about an hour south of Indianapolis. We're located in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a classic residential Big Ten college town, about 85,000 permanent residents in Bloomington. And then you'll also find about 32,000 undergraduates and another 10,000 grad students. So if you're looking for that sort of residential Big Ten experience, large diverse student body that's coming from all over the country, all over the world, that's what IU is all about. An outstanding academic reputation, certainly have a well-known business school, the Kelley School of Business, a great reputation in the life and biological sciences. We're the largest healthcare provider in the state of Indiana, so many opportunities across the life sciences as well as public health and the health professional schools. We're also home to a world-class music school, the Jacobs School of Music. So there is a phenomenal arts scene and arts and culture in Bloomington. So an opera company, a ballet company, jazz studies, and certainly if students have been involved with the arts at New Trier, they can continue that with us. Even if you're planning to be a business major or a journalism major or a nursing major, the arts are really ingrained in the campus culture in Bloomington. You'll find that with 40% of our students coming from outside the state of Indiana, it is definitely not a commuter school, not the kind of place that people go home every weekend. It's a very vibrant college town environment with lots to do and get involved with both on campus and in the community. Right around 60% of our students start off exploratory. So there are opportunities to be directly admitted into your first choice major, but the majority of our students do start off in what's called the university division, which is our academic home for exploratory students. And you would have until the end of your sophomore year to declare a major. So lots of time to do exploration. Double majors are very common with us, a major and a minor and a couple of different minors. So opportunities to explore in a variety of different areas and create a customizable undergraduate academic program that's going to help you reach your academic and career goals. The campus itself is very active with over 750 different student clubs and organizations. About 20% of our undergraduates are involved with fraternities and sororities, an active intramural and club sports program, arts and cultural organizations, student media, community service opportunities, leadership. All of our freshmen are required to live on campus, so many of the opportunities in that first year will really start to give you an opportunity to explore what we have to offer, as well as to make lifelong friends and really get involved in the campus and in the community. So about 4 hours from Chicago, we would love to have you come down and visit IU. And if you're looking for a large public research institution, beautiful campus and a great college town, we certainly encourage you to take a look at what IU Bloomington has to offer.
Great. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing a little bit about yourself and your institutions. I think that sets a really great framework for the conversation we'll continue to have this evening. So next up, we're formatting this more or less in a kind of a frequently asked questions type of panel. So I have some questions that I know our office has kind of deliberated about and put together, thinking of our current class of 2021, our rising juniors, and some of the things that we tend to hear a lot from the students and parents. And then also, of course, some more specific question, given the time that we're in right now, probably the most unique time in college admissions and enrollment that any of us have seen in our professional careers and possibly within the career itself. So we'll kind of go down some directed questions on that as it might be applicable to this class of 2021. So for each question, I'm essentially going to pose it to a couple of our panelists to kind of help move the chat along a little bit more seamlessly. So for this first question, I'd love to gear it a little bit more directly towards Michael from Lake Forest College and Carlene from DePaul University, thinking of a school located more in a suburban residential area and then a school located in the city. And this question is a little bit more on visiting campuses. So, you know, given the limitations that COVID-19 has caused around families visiting campuses or not visiting campuses during this past spring semester and early summer, what are some suggestions each of you have in terms of families visiting colleges, perhaps some virtual resources, and even maybe going into some long-term planning, thinking the next year and things that folks should consider?
You know, we talk often about there's lots of negatives with COVID-19, but there's also been a lot of really good positives that have come out of it that may not be readily apparent. And from an admissions standpoint, I think what we've realized is that it's given us some, while we can't host students on campus right now anyways, it's given us a lot more flexibility in what we can offer virtually. You know, we've been able to offer individual appointments with students, which oftentimes with our size has been tricky to do with people on campus and kind of balancing the number of staff on campus at any given time. We've also been able to include more faculty in sessions that are being offered virtually, and even current students, when oftentimes just the times that we're offering on campus visits may not always align with their class schedules and availability as well. So, you know, I think I would definitely encourage you to explore the virtual offerings that the different schools are offering, because I do think there's a lot of ways that you can, until you can actually go to a campus, and we don't know exactly when that is just yet, right? And depending on where the schools are located, there might be different guidelines and restrictions based on their local governments. But I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of the virtual options for right now in these next few months, the beginning of your senior year, because there is quite a wide variety of what's being offered out there.
It's similar to what Carlene said. I mean, we had to move everything virtually when this first hit. You know, the state of Illinois, as many of you are aware of, all of a sudden we were on lockdown and everything was shut down. You know, up until really the week before the lockdown, we were still having some students come to campus, but most people were canceling on us at that point. So we started to think about moving things virtually. When the lockdown hit, we moved everything online. And so for us, we had a two-pronged approach in moving things online, which were to really replicate what we offer with personal visits. So like Forest, our personal visits will often include things like faculty chats with coaches if students are interested in athletics, music auditions if they're auditioning for music scholarships or theater scholarships, opportunities to see classrooms, sit on classes. We couldn't do any of that anymore. And so instead, what we were then able to do was really get faculty on board and doing those things virtually. And so we were able to then, for students who needed to do revisits or for students who hadn't had a chance to come to campus yet, they were able to get that experience. The other thing we saw was that the virtual tour that we have online, which we hope is utilized more often than maybe it was initially, started getting utilized all the time. And what that allowed us to do is take a look at what are students using, what are they not using, and really assess what was seemingly most helpful for students in the virtual experience, and then built out some of our larger scale programming online so that students could attend virtual sessions. So our open houses, for example, moved online. In fact, the reason I'm in a tie right now is because we have a virtual open house session tonight as well. And so, students who may not have been able to attend can now attend those things online. And so, the other big advantage is the pre-recording, is we've been able to record everything. And so a student who isn't able to make it, or a student who, quite frankly, it's not the best time for them to attend something, to watch it later, they now have the ability to do that. And then we have communication afterwards to make sure that they can follow up with their admissions counselor. Because we're up in Lake County, because we're small, and because of the guidance that we're following, we have been fortunate to be able to reopen campus in a very limited fashion. So we are now offering visits, one family per tour guide. And so we have all the protocols in place. We follow all the CDC and state of Illinois guidelines, and we limit one family to one tour guide. And so we're limited tours. And so we have seen students start to come back to campus in a very limited fashion, despite the fact that the vast majority are still doing so online. And so as a result, what we're seeing from this is that those virtual options will continue to be offered, and they do continue to be offered. The virtual sessions are not going to go away. I think, to Carlene's point, one of the things we've all learned from this is that there are a number of ways that we were forced to innovate that have really propelled campus visits forward. And I'd encourage you, for any campus that you're interested in, to really investigate some of those, because you're going to learn some things that you may not have learned just by visiting campus. But we are now in a position where we're able to bring people back to campus in a limited way, and as a result, it's one per family. And so our guests are having that experience to be able to get back to campus, but admittedly, it does look very different than it did previously.
Great. Thank you both so much for those insights. And it's interesting to see the different perspectives, again, going from kind of city to suburbs and different locations. And I think that'll probably be ongoing as these months go on, at different locations and different states and municipalities, and what they're able to accommodate, and the ways they're innovating along the way. So that's great to hear. I'd like to gear this next question towards Grace from University of Chicago and Scott from Indiana University. So something we've been hearing frequently from counselors is a voiced concern from some students and parents of the idea that perhaps the class of 2020, these current graduating seniors, are deciding to defer their enrollment, meaning they were admitted to an institution, they contacted the institution and asked, can I wait a year to enroll and take some time off? So there is a sense that maybe that's going on quite frequently. And so I'd love to hear if that is the case at either of your institutions. And if so, are you getting a sense that might have a negative impact on the class of 2021 as they look to possibly enroll the same year that a deferred 2020 student? So just that general conversation about what are the numbers actually looking like with deferred enrollments, and how may or may not that affect the class of 2021?
I work mostly with students from New York City and their families, and I love to call this one my New York question, because I get it almost exclusively in New York and in areas where people are talking a lot about college and have a lot of knowledge and sometimes a lot of concerns about the college process. I want to reassure everyone, this is not a problem that we are facing, at least at U Chicago. Realistically, I can understand how it might be out there that a lot of students might want to defer, but we're not seeing larger than typical numbers of students want to defer. Every year we do have a small number of students who do want to take gap years for very reasonable reasons, and we're happy to allow students to do that. But number one, that's something that we sort of build into our planning as we think about our enrollment as a whole university. And number two, I think one of the things that has left out a little bit of the concern conversation about students deferring is that realistically, when students are choosing to defer their enrollment, they're usually going to do something that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do while they're enrolled in college. And so whether that's, take a full-time job in an area that they're interested in, or volunteer for a year, or really work on a personal passion, or maybe do some sort of experience abroad. I think one of the things that we're noticing too is that all of those opportunities are also on hold for students. So realistically, I think it's important to think about the fact that deferring enrollment for a year right now looks very similar for most students to whatever college will look like in the fall. And I think on the balance, most students have, and sometimes thought about that, but then recognized that like, even if there's a little bit of uncertainty, and I think we're starting to see that there's becoming more certainty in terms of what many schools' plans will look like for in-person instruction for especially first-year students, that the idea of deferring is just not necessarily as attractive in practice as it might be on paper, and we're not seeing those types of challenges. So do not worry. It's not something that students should be concerned about. We are all invested in making sure that we can have robust classes of students every single year, and it's both not a thing, and even if it were to be a thing, it's something that we would be able to adjust for to be able to welcome all of you to join us in the year that's appropriate for you.
And I'll just concur with what Grace said. It's not an issue on our campus either. Our requests for deferrals are not any larger than they would be in a typical year, and they're usually pretty small. The fact that we've announced that we will be doing face-to-face instruction in the fall, I think certainly is a big reason for that. So as long as that is able to continue, I don't anticipate there being significant numbers of requests to deferral at Indiana.
Great. Thank you both. And yeah, something I know our office has shared a lot too is that not only do college admissions and just universities in general look at enrollment year to year, but they look at it in totality. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of say, well, even if organically perhaps a school or college slightly over-enrolled or slightly under-enrolled one year, they make adjustments as needed because they look at the institution as a whole. So regardless of even what these next few months look like, that long-term planning's always going to be there anyway. At the same time, though, I'd love to almost dovetail this question a little bit with Michelle Brown from Oakton. Michelle, is Oakton noticing any upticks in terms of looking at summer class enrollments even into next fall? How are, from a community college standpoint, how are things looking similar or looking different for you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. So this summer, all our classes are online, as is many colleges and universities across the country. Our enrollment is about the same as last summer, but our population that has decided to take the online classes is different. Ironically, we have seen more high school students want to come to Oakton and take classes as a concurrent student, so meaning prior to high school graduation, or in some instances right after high school graduation, come to take classes because they're not sure what they're going to do all summer, and they're taking advantage of this opportunity that maybe their summer camp was canceled or they were going to go on a trip across the country, and so plans have changed, so we've seen more of that. For the fall, it's still early to tell. We have seen our applications go up, and I think that more high school graduates that graduated this year are applying to Oakton for the fall because of the uncertainty and because they're not sure if they're going to be comfortable going away to a college campus, to a residential campus, or even if some schools are still deciding how many people they're going to let into their dorms for this fall. So we've seen that. We're anticipating enrollment probably to level off and be the same as things get finalized. But yeah, speaking of the summer and speaking of the concurrent enrollment, I'll just kind of throw in here, since really these issues are for graduates and not our high school rising seniors, but our high school rising seniors could consider taking a class at Oakton while they're still in high school. Now, we don't recommend it if they have a rigorous senior year class load, but if they have a lighter load or looking for additional opportunities, or maybe looking to try a subject that their high school doesn't offer. I know New Trier offers quite a few subjects in AP classes, but there is an option for students to take classes at their local community college while they're in school. And then also, let me just talk about the summer option. For those of you that are thinking about summer school down the road, Oakton is a great opportunity no matter where you end up going to college after high school. A lot of New Trier students will come back to Oakton and pick up a class or two over the summer and then transfer it back to their four-year institution. So a nice advantage to have us in your backyard and have that opportunity to do that.
So this next question, I would love to gear toward, let me look at the question I'm about to, for Carlene from DePaul. And then also to, back to Scott again for Indiana. This is a little bit about testing, because I know Indiana and DePaul differ slightly in terms of some testing aspects. So thinking of how current New Trier juniors and really current juniors in the majority of our area in north suburbs in Illinois weren't able to sit for the ACT or SAT in March, April, May, June, and July was really tricky at best. You know, for those that have it pending, the seating is pretty limited at most test centers, given the state of Illinois' limitations when it comes to the COVID-19 accommodations for that. So thinking of that in context, we'd love to get a sense from each of your institutions how you might be planning to accommodate these limits placed on students due to the pandemic, and how their testing very well might look a little bit different than in most years past.
I think our philosophy throughout this pandemic as it's unfolded has been trying to be understanding, empathetic, and just realizing that this is not your fault, right? This is not the fault of high school students. You know, this is kind of something that's happened to all of us, and you know, we have to be flexible in that regard. The good thing is that DePaul has been test optional already for a number of years, so we've already had this in place where students could choose kind of how they wanted to present themselves in the application process. So if they're a student that has a strong standardized test, maybe they've already taken it previously and feel like that's a good representation of themselves, and they can apply with that test score. But if they feel like their grades are a really great representation of their day-to-day work, and you know, don't feel as strongly about that test score, or in this case weren't even able to take a standardized test, they can apply without that test score. And actually, I think all of us on the panel may now be test optional, if I am thinking this through correctly. So there's more and more schools that have moved to this more immediately because they know, you know, they've seen that students aren't able to take standardized tests. But there's a whole number of schools that have been test optional for a while, and then there's been a growing trend more recently because of the standardized test implications of allowing students to apply more flexibly without a test.
Yeah, that's right, Carlene. Indiana University just went test optional.
Mm-hmm.
Announced that back in January, so before any of us knew this was coming. So this was a planned decision. We're very happy about that that decision had been made in the process for reviewing applications for fall 2021 for students that decided to apply test optional was already in the works, which is great. So students will have the opportunity to apply test optional at IU. If students that are still planning on testing either over the summer or in the fall, we will have an early action date of November 1. So if students want to make a decision whether to apply test optional or not after they've received that initial test score, they have until November 1 to do that. And we are actively exploring ways for students to still share that information with us after November 1 if they apply test optional. So if IU is on your list, you can certainly check with me closer to August 1 when the Common App goes live, and I'll have more information about that. But the option to apply test optional is definitely available with us.
And then Scott, just one other aspect to that is for Indiana, are you guys going to be test optional across the board for all programs too? Will some programs like Kelly and others still need a test? How has that been looking?
That's a great question. And so students that apply test optional still have every opportunity that's available for a student that submits a test score. And that does include merit-based scholarships. It includes direct admission into their first choice major. Now, how that process may work may have an additional piece to it if you apply test optional. So you had mentioned the Kelly School. So students that are interested in direct admission into the Kelly School and who apply test optional will need to use the petition to request a holistic review. There will still be automatic criteria for direct admission that will be a combination of grades and test scores, but students who decide to apply test optional will have that opportunity through their petition process for a holistic review for direct admission. And I anticipate that's going to be the case with all of the schools that do offer direct admission into first choice major. Our Office of Scholarships has already confirmed that all students who apply test optional will get the full review for merit-based funding without a test score.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's super insightful to understand that there are definitely different levels that might be able to occur, but it's at the same time accommodations happening on both sides of that process regardless. So kind of continuing the conversation about how things have changed a little bit. Most students, and this was kind of mentioned earlier by Michelle looking at the concurrent enrollment conversation, but thinking of how students have had to change some of their summer plans. A lot of them did have things mapped out to either go to camp or work or volunteer or do a host of different things. And much of those have been canceled. So I'd love to hear from Michael at Lake Forest and then also from Grace at University of Chicago, from your institution's perspectives, how might the admissions committee conversations look a little bit different, knowing that students' activities over summer, or maybe even just with last spring and other general activities are going to be looking different. How has that been discussed in your offices?
Yeah, so one of the things, and this has been a topic of conversation quite a bit, because I think in hearing some of the others speak just in generalities, we want to be accommodating, knowing that everybody's in a different situation depending on how they've been affected. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing is really understanding a student situation and context. And so as we're interviewing students, because we interview the vast majority of our students, learning a little bit more about their situations in terms of how they spent their time, or if some of those opportunities that they potentially had, trying to get a sense of what that would have looked like for them to really get to know who the student is through their process. Because a lot of times those activities, those leadership opportunities, they really help us understand who a student is. And so we can still, by talking to the student and getting a sense of what opportunities were available to them or what opportunities they were looking to take on, get a sense of who they are and how they would be successful and how they would be contributing members to the community. So, for us, it's another opportunity to really get to know a student, and a lot of that will be handled likely in the interview process. I anticipate that we'll see a lot of either essays or additional information sections that talk about the summer, that talk about the spring, and how this experience relates to their process. But ultimately, that's where, by working with each student individually, which for us is something that we always try to do, we're really going to try to get to better understand students' experiences so that it can accurately reflect who they are in this process, as opposed to not seeing certain things on an activities chart, or not seeing certain things in that junior summer before you start the senior year.
Yeah, I agree that, a lot of what Michael said and also what we've been talking about is the idea that we know that this is not your fault, right? We know that there are a lot of people that have had solid plans or activities you really wanted to continue with, and it's on pause for a reason. We're all, home to make sure that we're safe and that others are safe, and that's really the most important thing right now. Just kind of two things that I would probably add to that. Number one, remember that, there are occasionally people who just start their activities in the spring of their junior year, but most of you haven't, and we still understand that a lot of the things that you've been involved in and committed to throughout school are on pause, but it's not that they were never part of your life. And so we can understand a little bit more from you about what you like and how you like to engage with your community and the world with some of the things that you've been able to do or that you have done, even if we know that those are all on pause for everyone right now too. But number two, I would encourage you as you approach the summer, and even in the fall, if things remain a little bit more in the space of social distancing and sort of reduction in out of the home and out of school activities, to think about why a lot of the things you might have planned in for your summer were of interest to you, and sort of what the goals for those may have been. In some ways, I know it feels really exciting to go to a residential summer program at a college that you're interested in, or to have an abroad experience, or to have an internship at a company. But if you sort of drill down to the goals of that, I think there's a lot of other ways to be able to achieve what you might have been looking for in those spaces. If you were looking for, a way to enhance yourself academically or to take on a new subject, listen to Michelle as she talks about some of the options at Oakton. and think about whether or not that might contribute toward the goal. If you are looking for ways to serve your community or give back, maybe think a little bit closer to home. Maybe what could you be doing even in your own home that could be helpful to parents who might be continuing to work full-time with little help on the horizon. If you are interested in a summer job or an internship because you need financial assistance as you approach college, there are other ways to start thinking about engaging with that. And I think we all want to broaden, I think, a little bit more about how we approach the summer and student activities, because realistically in college and in the college admissions process, we're not just looking to these ideas to say, aha, they checked the box, they did it. Even in the most highly selective colleges, that's not how we approach evaluating activities or things that you've taken on. It really is to see what goals might you have, what interests might you have, and how might those play out when you're part of our community. So we recognize that can be shown, and that can happen in a lot of different ways. And ultimately also, if there is not an opportunity for you to continue engaging, if you need to stay at home for yourself, for your parents, if you could be most helpful just helping out around the house, for any parents watching, any students watching, I give you permission right now to remember that the lady from the University of Chicago said that making dinner and cleaning up around the house can be an extracurricular activity this summer. It counts. We value it, and it's important too. So just keep all of those things in mind and know that we're not going to worry about it. So you can have that permission to feel a little bit more comfortable with the changes.
Grace, can you come tell my children that?
We're recording it. Your children are welcome to this, but yes, I'm happy to call them up and the
Perfect.
Chicago and tell them when it's time to do their chores.
Okay, so recently ACT announced that they're going to be allowing students to take individual sections to retest, be it the English section, the math section, the science section, what have you. Actually, and in fact, today they also announced that they'd be postponing this initiative, but yet it still will be on the horizon at some point in time. Moreover, that ACT is also going to be allowing students to do a super score test score report, meaning that when students ultimately go to send their scores to colleges, that they can choose to send their super score, meaning not all their scores, but just the highest sub-scores of what's been taken so far. So I'd love to hear more from Grace at University of Chicago, and then also from Michelle at Oakton, knowing that Oakton also uses testing for placement. How might each of your institutions accept, not accept, manage, look at those kinds of different scores and score reports?
Yeah, so UChicago, like many colleges, and I think almost every college that's represented here, has always accepted students' super scored score reports. So traditionally what that would have looked like is that you would have sent us either an official score report or through a self-report all of the test dates that you'd taken. But if we receive a super scored score report from the testing agency, that's just fine. We're happy to receive that. As for the individual section testing scores, that'll also be accepted if you choose to do that. But just as anything, I always want to encourage folks to not sweat that too much, right? Don't make testing an extracurricular activity. In our processes, if we ever, UChicago is test optional, but for many colleges that require testing or might be on a test optional pilot, we still don't expect that students will take the test over and over and over and over and over again until everything is perfect. Do the best you can, and if you felt like you really weren't able to give it your all in a particular section, maybe consider the section retest if that feels right to you. But don't worry that that's something that you have to do, even though it's something that will.
Great, and I'll jump in here from Oakton Community College just by saying that we do use standardized test scores for placement purposes. We always give students the benefit of the doubt. So we will take the highest score no matter how many tests that you end up taking, or if you take certain sections over. So that's always to your benefit. And also, we also have options for students to take our assessments on campus if they're not comfortable with their standardized ACT or SAT scores. We know that not all students are good test takers, and that's okay. Don't stress about that. I think you heard most of the schools on this video chat were saying that they're test optional, so you don't have to be a stellar test taker. But also know that if you decide you want to go the transfer route and start at Oakton Community College, if you stay for 2 years and get your associate degree, then most four-year colleges and universities are going to look at your grade point average at Oakton Community College to determine your admission to their four-year college or university. So most will not look at test scores, or even in some instances, not your high school grades. They're going to focus on your grades at the community college. So that's another benefit of why some students decide to start at a community college.
Great, thank you both for those insights. One question that comes up oftentimes as students are gearing up for the process is a little bit on social media. You know, is it common for college admissions offices to look at a student social media account? I'd love to hear from Michael and from Scott on this question.
Sure. I mean, to be honest with you, we don't as practice. You know, certainly if something is brought to our attention and it's something that we need to take a look at because it's been brought to our attention, that's a different story. But it's not a situation where we see an applicant come through and then all of a sudden we look at their Twitter handle and we try to see if we can find them on Instagram or their Facebook page. It's nothing like that. We don't Google students or anything like that. But at the same time, you want to make sure that that you recognize that anything that's in social media is public. And as a result, somebody may come across it. We may be notified as somebody comes across it. And at that rate, then it may become part of our understanding of the applicant's process. So that's not to say that because we don't look at it, you don't have to worry about it. You need to be smart about what you put out there, because again, if we then we need to account for that. But at the same time, it's not necessarily part of our practice to go out and find it.
Yeah, the same would be the case at IU. We close to 50,000 applications last year. We're not going to assign somebody to scour social media accounts for all of those applicants. But if something is brought to our attention, there is a behavior committee through the admissions office that would investigate anything along those lines, either from the school or from another source, just to make sure that there wasn't a situation that needed to be addressed before an admissions decision was made, or before a decision was made to enroll the student as well.
Great, thank you. And then I'll have this next question go to Carlene at DePaul and Grace at University of Chicago. And it's a little bit more about essays. You know, we've talked about testing, that's part of the application, and it might be for some students, might not for others. We talked a little bit about activities and how that's looked at, but you know, the essay, the student's own voice of the application, is often something that's taken with great care in the admissions office, especially for the holistic review process. I'd love to hear from both of you, maybe some common mistakes or missteps you noticed students taking over the years that you'd wish to share to try to avoid those. And then on the flip side, things that you would encourage students to really give good thought to and consider as they're considering possibly doing some essay work and starting that work this summer.
We were actually kind of just joking about this amongst ourselves not too long ago here on the Zoom, about when students write an essay about all the reasons that they'd like to go to XYZ institution, but then they list the wrong. They're applying to DePaul, but they list another university instead. So even though you might be cutting and pasting and using the same essay, just don't make it so obvious. Perhaps that would be one piece of advice. I think for the positive for us, the essay is really a chance just to get to know more about you as a student. And everything else on the application is list this and what's this number, and itemize out all these things and demographic information. But this is a chance where you can really share a little bit more into your personality, into your background, into what you love or are passionate about. And so, there are schools that an essay is optional. And I would always encourage you to take that time to complete the essay, because it shows that you're taking the application process very seriously, that you're wanting to include additional information, and it can make you stand out, right, from all of the other numbers and demographic information being listed.
Yeah, I really agree in terms of how an essay can really help us to understand a little bit more about who you are off the list and off the just small categories of things that are asked for in other parts of the application. One of the things that I just want to caution students against is writing your essay about coronavirus. I know that I am a little apprehensive about the number of essays that we might get, because we know that obviously this is a big disruption to many students' lives, and it's for some of you probably the biggest challenge that many of you have had to face, and feel natural to want to write about that. But in other ways, I would also encourage you to remember that this experience, while it might differ from person to person, is relatively universal. We're all facing, disruption and challenge related to that. And we still want to know about those things about you that are unique to you or feel special to you. So even though, your baseball season might have been canceled or you weren't able to do the school play, we still care that that's what you love to do, or that that's a part of your life, and would love to have the opportunity to hear about that. On the Common application, or if you're using the Coalition application for college, they've actually, both of the systems have announced that they'll be giving students a space for additional information specifically related to this experience of quarantine or coronavirus, COVID-19. So don't worry, there is going to be space to talk about it if you feel you've had a particularly unique or a big impact on your life experience from this time. So that would be my one caveat there. As for the good stuff, I think there's so much good stuff about essays. Especially at most smaller liberal arts colleges or colleges that are a little bit more selective. One thing I want to encourage students to remember is that not only will we ask for the personal statement that comes with the Common application, but we're also going to ask for supplements that relate specifically to our institutions, some of which, as Carleen mentioned, might be optional, some of which are required. At UChicago, we take those particularly seriously. And so I want to remind everyone that a lot of times those supplement essays, while they might come at the end of the application, should not be the last thing that you do or the last thing that you think about as you're applying to college. Many times a supplement essay might be something, the question about why would you like to go to this university, or maybe ask a unique or particular question relating to that individual school or the types of things that they value. And in many ways, I think of these questions as, in the UChicago application process, as the rest of your application is you applying to college. You're telling us about all of the great ways that you could be a great student at a college. And the supplement for the University of Chicago is you really applying to the University of Chicago, telling us, what characteristics about your intellectual life, what things you value, what things you're interested in, how your brain works, and then a little bit more explicitly about why UChicago specifically speaks to you. That is really something that helps me to imagine you not just as a college student, but as a UChicago student, and can be a real differentiator in our process when we're looking at many highly qualified and highly talented students who would like to go here and have a relatively limited number of spaces to give away. So, think about those supplements, recognize that those supplements are important, and also recognize that sometimes the flavor of the question can be helpful to you in revealing a little bit more about that school itself, right? If a school asks you a very creative question or something that's a little quirky off the wall, that's what we do. Perhaps that's a sign that the student body and the intellectual experience might have that flavor. If a school is asking you about a time that you took a leadership role or a time that you gave back to your community, that might be a sign that those are qualities and characteristics that are both important to that school and also should be, on your mind as you think about whether or not you could be a good match and would enjoy the experience there. So it's all that kind of back and forth of your fit and your match for a school that sometimes comes out in that supplement. And that's why I really encourage students to start taking a look at those earlier on in the process. Don't leave them, and they're important to us, not just that you do them, but also the kind of information that we can learn about you and about how you might fit with our community through.
Awesome, thank you. So both earlier in the presentation, both Carleen from DePaul and Michelle from Oakton made mention of the transfer process, both that, their institutions, as all of yours do, work with transfer students, but, perhaps, particularly thinking of Oakton with students transferring on to possibly a four-year school after theirs, or even, as Carleen had mentioned, just a certain concerted effort towards enrolling a certain amount of transfer students and having that kind of population come into their institution. I would love to hear from both of you, your perspectives, thinking of a current rising senior who might ultimately transfer between colleges one day, whether they're initially planning on it or not. Maybe they had a change of heart, change of mind on a major, whatever it might be, and just some long-term planning and what any student should really give thought to when it comes to a transfer process later on in their college years.
Sure, I'm happy to start, and then Carlene, if you want to pick it up after and talk from the perspective from the four-year university, that'd be great. So I wanted to just say that there's usually two types of students that are transfer students. The first group of students are students that are coming to the community college because they are very unsure of what they want to major in and very unsure of what they want to do as a career. These students tend to be highly motivated and academically qualified students, and they have so many talents, and that's why they have such a challenging time deciding. We know nationwide that undecided is the most popular major, even though it's not a major, the most popular incoming freshman program of study selected. And we also know students that select a major as an incoming freshman direct from high school, on average, will change their major 3 times prior to graduating with their bachelor's degree. So it's very common and normal to be undecided. So I want everyone listening to this video who's undecided to just feel like, okay, you are actually in the majority. So don't feel stressed. And all your friends and family members and parents of your parents' friends are saying, what are you going to major in? Where are you going to go to college? You know, it's more normal to say, I'm not sure, than to say, like, I'm going to be an engineer. So starting with that, you could come to Oakton, you could take your first 2 years of general education, which is basically your English, your reading, your writing, your math, your humanities, your social sciences, your natural sciences, the same core classes that you're going to take for almost any bachelor's degree in the country. You could take at the community college and then get your associate degree. And then during your second year of your associate degree, then start exploring college options and start applying with your academic advisor at Oakton to these colleges. Our students apply to over 600 different colleges. If you know you want to stay in Illinois, it's very simple transfer process because we have an Illinois Articulation Initiative, which is an agreement between the community colleges in Illinois and the state and private schools in Illinois. And so this agreement basically says, we're going to accept the associate degree as a package and you'll come in as a junior and you won't be wasting time and having to repeat classes. So it's 2 years at the community college, 2 years at the four-year institution, and then you graduate with your bachelor's degree. If you want to transfer out of state, then we'll work with the out-of-state college admission reps on what classes are appropriate for you to take at Oakton so that you can transfer seamlessly. The other group of transfer students are students that have a goal in mind and know what they want to do, but they choose to community college route to get there. So these are students that might want to go to a highly selective college that they might not get admitted to directly from high school because of the competitive application process. An example of this is University of Illinois' engineering program. We have a joint agreement where students can come to Oakton and they get admitted jointly to Oakton and U of I's College of Engineering in Urbana-Champaign. They do 2 years at Oakton in our engineering curriculum, and then they transfer seamlessly to U of I. There's all types of programs that have these joint agreements and transfer agreements that students can get into, and it's a way to save money and then to, in the end, get that degree from that dream institution that you're hoping to get that degree from. So I'll pass it off to Carlene. I know that there's a lot of transfer students at DePaul, so she probably wants to speak a little bit to that.
Sure. Yeah, we, as I mentioned in my intro, we have about as many transfer students start new at DePaul over the course of an academic year as we do incoming freshmen. So it's about 2,000 transfer students come to DePaul each year. We work very closely with the local community colleges, Oakton being one of those. We have staff that spend time pretty significantly at Oakton. As an example, we'll take appointments with students who are on campus there. We have transfer agreements, transfer guides worked out that basically will show, okay, if you take these courses at Oakton, here's how they will transfer into DePaul's degree. We also have a partnership program called the DePaul Admission Partnership Program. And if students join that while they're at the community college, it actually locks in their degree requirements. So even if DePaul makes any changes to the curriculum during the time you're at the community college, we will honor kind of the curriculum that you had been following and planning out your transfer. So the transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year can be done very easily if it's planned out, and there's resources at both Oakton and at DePaul to help navigate that for you. For example, we have a group of 7 counselors that's all they do is work with students that are considering transferring, and they'll talk to students who are still in high school and have made that decision, right? I'm going to go to Oakton first, and then I, am looking to come to DePaul. So it's definitely a very viable option if that's something that you're interested in.
Great, thank you both. So a couple more questions left. I want to chat briefly about letters of recommendation. It's a little bit different at school to school. Some schools don't require them at all. Some might need 1, some might want to see 2. And I know there's a bit of a variety with our guests here in terms of how their institution manages letters of recommendation. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from both Grace and Michael, thinking University of Chicago, who requires 2 teacher letters of recommendation. Lake Forest College requiring 1, could be a counselor, could be a teacher, but still has a requirement for a letter of recommendation to come through. We'd love to hear more about how that is a part of the admissions process, how you learn more about students through those letters. We obviously recommend when students are asking teachers, they consider those core academic courses, teachers with whom they've got a strong rapport. But just to speak a little bit in terms of students and common questions that both of you might be receiving from prospective students about letters of recommendation.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. At U Chicago, we do require that you have 2 recommendations from high school teachers, and then some type of evaluation, whether or not it's a full letter of recommendation or at least a form that accompanies the common application from a school counselor. In the case of letters of recommendation, we really feel that we get all that we need out of those that we require. We do allow students to submit 1 additional letter of recommendation, maybe from somebody in the community that knows you well, or maybe you're an Eagle Scout and you want your troop leader to write a rec letter for you. That would be completely fine. But I want to pause there and let everybody know that, like, above and beyond that, and even that optional recommendation is absolutely not required. This is not a race to get the most letters of recommendation. And after a certain point, when we're seeing 5, 6, 7 letters of recommendation that students are attempting to submit to us, we start wondering, is this a student who can read and understand rules? Because, we've made these suggestions knowing that we do not need more than that. And in fact, what your teachers and your school counselor have to say and share with us about you is really usually quite robust and quite helpful to our understanding of who you'll be in the classroom and as part of a school community. As you mentioned, Bob, we do encourage core academic subject teachers. Think of those subjects that will be core for everyone in college. So maybe an English teacher, a history teacher, a math teacher, or science teacher. While there are lots of other teachers who are very awesome people and very valuable, I think hearing from teachers who might have assigned you a problem set or a lab or read a paper that you've written tend to be teachers that can speak to us a little bit more for what we're looking for just in the college admissions process. And as for balance, some students will wonder, do I need recommendations from different types of teachers? Can they be in the same subject? We don't have any specific recommendations about that, although I would suggest thinking at least about teachers in slightly different subject categories. If you're a math genius, your junior and senior year math teachers are probably going to tell us the same thing: math genius and math genius. And we probably just needed to hear that from one of them to understand and know it. So, thinking about a teacher who might know you in a different capacity or have other great things to say about the whole spectrum of your academic abilities and experiences could be very helpful to us too. So feel free to broaden a little bit there. But if there's one thing you remember today, it is, do not worry about loading up on random letters of recommendation from your dad's business partner's friend's cousin, or the random person at a summer internship who never actually met you. We really value just sticking to the rules talking, teachers who really know you well and can talk to us about how you might transition to college and do work well in college rather than the vol.
Yeah, similar to what Grace had to say. I mean, for us, it's a teacher or a counselor. Oftentimes, students will submit a teacher and a counselor, and that's just fine. I think one of the things that we've learned as a school that only requires one is that when students are also applying to schools that require 2 or 3, they just submit all of them anyway, and we're perfectly fine with that. And in fact, one of the reasons why we say 1 is because we know we'll get that 1. We anticipate we may get a couple more. It's not required, but we anticipate we may get a couple more, but that usually keeps it at no more than 2 or 3. For us, really what we're trying to learn is more about who you are and how you're going to be a contributing member of the community and how you're going to be successful in college. So for us, and one of the biggest questions I get asked about this is, should I have somebody with the best title write it? And the thing is, if the person with the best title doesn't know you, that's not really going to help us. For us, we're just trying to get a sense of really somebody who knows you, who can speak to what you bring to a community and what you bring to the academic experience and how you will be successful. And in theory, for us anyway, our hope is that when we get a letter of recommendation, that the person who writes it could only write that about you, right? And so for us, one of the things that we talk to students about is if you can find somebody who can write something so personally about you that only they can write it, that's the person we want to see the recommendation from. It should be a core teacher or a counselor, because ultimately they're the best indicators for us in terms of academic success and success in college. But the teacher that we recommend, and fortunately, and I would encourage you, especially, as future students, take advantage of the meetings you can have with your college counselors, because they will get to know you at this level. That tells us everything we need to know, because literally nobody else could write that. And that's how we know that we can really get to know the student outside of what's in their application. And that's the only other thing I'd add too, is that, our hope is that it's providing a dimension that we aren't already seeing in the application packet, because that makes it that much more holistic of an application for us.
Awesome, thank you. I think I have 2 more questions I'd want to touch base on. So the next question, a little bit more in unpacking the types of applications that are out there, be it early action, early decision, regular decision, time frame, that sort of piece, and how that is reviewed differently, how it may help a student's chance of gaining an admission or not, and how that tends to look. So I know for both University of Chicago and Lake Forest College, both of your institutions offer early action, early decision, and regular decision, 3 different ways. And then also, I'd love to hear from Scott at Indiana University, a school who offers early action, but might have certain opportunities tied to one application or another. So just everyone's kind of take an insight in terms of thinking of an audience of rising seniors and how they're going to be starting to make some carved paths in terms of the schools to which they're applying.
Yeah, I'm happy to start off. And actually at UChicago, we have 4 decision plans, which makes it a little more complicated. We have early action, early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision. So I like to say it's a buffet of something for everybody. In terms of the specific definitions, early decision and early decision 2 are binding commitments to attend the University of Chicago or any college that you would be applying to on that time frame. And generally, what any school is hoping and what you should expect if you apply through an early decision timeframe is that if you are admitted, you will attend that college in the fall. And that's the commitment, and that's the value there. It's important to know going in that if you're somebody who feels like you want or need to weigh offers among multiple different options, an early decision pathway is not the right fit. But if you're somebody who knows, oh my gosh, I love UChicago so much, or I love Lake Forest, or I love XYZ University, that's where I want to be, and if I were admitted, that's where I'd be in the fall, then early decision can be a great way to both signal that and have that commitment in place. Every year, we do have some students who come back and say, oh, but wait, I was thinking maybe I could find some other colleges, and we're like, nope. You sign an agreement with your parent and your school counselor that says that you understand these requirements, and that's what you know what you're getting into, and that's what we hope students will stick with. early action and regular decision offer pathways that are more open. And so for students who aren't ready to make that commitment, when there is an open pathway, sometimes schools will not have all of the options there. Sometimes you'll have multiple options, but we know that for some students, you might want to wait to apply earlier on to get a decision earlier on, but not be ready to make that commitment yet. And that's okay. That's why early action exists. In terms of the benefits, I mean, in most schools, right? And some schools will have different percentages on this one. Sometimes it might be very, sometimes it might just be a little bit of a nudge up. That's where UChicago sits. The rate for early action, for early decision can be a little bit higher than our typical acceptance rate for a non-binding admission program. That's in some ways by design. We're really excited to admit students who we know we're their top choice, and it's wonderful for us to be able to say, we don't have to do a whole lot of planning of, oh, will they or won't they? Like, that student could be on our campus next year, and that's great to know. But in other cases, I think particularly, I'll speak from the highly selective college perspective, I think some students see early decision and say, aha, that must make it really easy to get into that school, or much easier than typical to get into that school. And that's not the case. I think it's better to describe it as less hard. In our applicant pool, when we're admitting students from early decision, we're admitting students who look absolutely equal to the students that we would take in any of our other timeframes. But just with the knowledge that it can be really exciting to know that you'll be on campus next year. So we're not relaxing any academic requirements. We're not taking students that wouldn't otherwise be competitive candidates for UChicago. It just tends to be a little bit exciting to know that you really, really see this as a match and would like to go here. The last thing that I'll say on that is, I think working with your school counselors to talk about what might be a great early decision option for you is important. There are times when we see students applying to UChicago in early decision where it was never going to be a good option. And while we want everybody to feel that you can try, you can shoot for the moon, there may be other schools that could be a really, really great fit for you, where using that one option to apply somewhere early decision might be a better way to make that match than trying for the true Hail Mary at UChicago when it probably is not going to be there for you. So that's what I'll say on early decision. Cool option for some, not right for others. It's okay.
So at Indiana, we just offer early action and regular decision. And early action, November 1, you're really applying in order to hear back quicker. You would hear a guaranteed decision by January 15th. If you waited until regular decision deadline of February 1, you'd hear by March 15th. But the best reason for students, particularly from out of state, to apply early action is it is a merit-based scholarship deadline. So students who apply early action, it's non-binding. You still have until May 1st to let us know if you would like to enroll, but it is the scholarship deadline, so you'll receive maximum merit-based scholarship consideration automatically for the Hutton Honors College. Many of our direct admit programs for first choice major also give preference to students who apply early action. And so those are some of the best reasons to consider early action. It's nice that it's non-binding, so you do have the opportunity to hear from other schools that might not release decisions until later into the winter or spring, but knowing that you have a decision from us and some additional great opportunities as it relates to merit-based funding or direct admission into your first choice major.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I know that was a really great comprehensive explanation. So last question I had, and I wanted to, maybe I'll gear this to Carleen and Michelle and Michael, since both Grace and Scott just spoke, but general recommendations you all have as a group in terms of moving forward, a rising senior, thinking that the audience for this video will be rising seniors and their parents, thinking of appropriate ways to get in touch with a college admissions representative from the student side, from the parent side, communication patterns, flow, follow-up, that sort of thing. If you could kind of craft how that ideally would look like coming from both a student and a parent, and what you'd recommend in terms of going down that path, I think that might set some great groundwork to wrap this webinar up.
From a parent standpoint, I would say, this is really a chance to let the student kind of own the process. I know sometimes that can be hard and it is complicated, right? There's different schools and different deadlines, and you don't want to miss anything too. But it can make a difference when the student is very engaged in the process and is the one reaching out to their admission counselor with questions. And, it's a sign of maturity. It's a sign that they're kind of ready for this next step. So, parents certainly play a very important part in this. Obviously, it's a family decision, but I would also just use this as kind of a chance to let your child start to take some ownership and kind of get ready for that next life phase, which will include a little more independence. This can be a good segue to that. We divide up territories among staff geographically. So we have one specific staff member, Josh Beek, who works with all the New Trier families. And, he's really there as a resource from initial thought of going to DePaul or considering applying to DePaul all the way until the point of showing up for class in the fall. So, there shouldn't be any hesitancy in reaching out to an admission counselor, using that person as a resource. Again, I know we talked a little bit about the essays and sharing insight into yourself, but for us, whoever is the admission rep for that school also reviews the applications for that school. So it can be helpful for the admission counselor if there is particular insight into your circumstances or whatnot, to just kind of know, is DePaul your number one choice? Or I had this strange thing happen in my sophomore year, to kind of share those insights in the developing of that relationship too.
We're the same way at Lake Forest in terms of the recruiter for the area is going to be the first read on the application. So because I recruit New Trier, any New Trier student that applies to Lake Forest College, I'm going to read their application. Any student who even comes for a visit, they're going to hear from me first. And so I think for us anyway, the way that we prefer to work with students when they reach out is to know from them how they want the process to work. And part of that is because we know some students need some additional assistance throughout the process. They may be the first to go to college. They may be the first in their family or period to go to college, or they may be the third sibling and their first two siblings went to completely different states and they're the only one who wants to stay close to home. Or we may have students that say, I want to apply, and then I want to see what happens, and then I want to deal with this process later. For us, we want to work with you where you're at. At the same time, we also want to build a relationship with you through the process, because ultimately, for us, we firmly believe that retention and graduation begins through the admissions process. The more we can learn about a student, the more we can learn how they're going to be successful, the more that, should they enroll, we can then, as they get to their advisors and they get to summer enrollment, really work on that transition process to then be successful, stay at Lake Forest, graduate in 4 years, and move on to their career. So you'll notice that in this entire process, I've said student only, right? And that's not to say that the parents aren't involved. We know that this is a family process, but ultimately, because the parent is not going to college with the student, we want to make sure that, I've always, when I used to work in student success, I always called this process a student's first college project, right? Their first college project is working through this process. They have all the resources at their disposal to be successful, and so they start to utilize those processes, take in all this information, make the best decision for themselves. And as admissions counselors, we are some of those resources for students. So, providing us with a sense of how we can be of assistance, how we can help, what we need to know, and then staying in contact with us throughout the process. Doesn't mean you need to email us every week and say, hey, I'm still interested in college. But if things change, if there's something that we should know, or if you have general questions, if you're just trying to figure some things out, staying in contact with us not only helps us understand that you continue to be interested, but at the same time, at the end of this process, you should all be learning something from this, and we're educating this process, and it helps us educate in that process.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here and just say that keep in mind there are over 7,000 colleges and universities to choose from. there are going to be lots of good fits. There's no one perfect fit for every student. And just know that, and don't feel the pressure and the stress to have to find that perfect school or get admitted to that dream school. The national research shows that students are just as happy at their second and third choice schools as they are at their first choice schools. And so I like to say to students and parents, have fun with it and enjoy the process. Try not to overstress about it. Know that really is a family process and decision, but in the end, the student really has to be the one to know that when they go to that college next fall, that it was their decision and that they're not just going there because it's their parents' alma mater or their parents wanted them to go there. I think that's really important that they know it's their decision and they have the parents' support, but the parents didn't make the decision for them. The other thing that I think is important to know, I come from a psychology background. We know that students make lists. They make practical lists about what colleges they should apply to. But when they ultimately make a decision, it's an emotional-based decision, usually during the campus visit. So make sure you visit campuses. Make sure it's a nice day on campus when you visit and not raining and snowing and crappy, because that will impact their decision. But they'll base their decision on emotion, how they feel on that campus, if they feel like they'll fit there, if they feel like they'll like it there and succeed there, and then they will back their rationale from that list that they made previously. So just know, like, this is an emotional decision based on a lot of factors, but also how students feel about it when they're there on campus. The other important thing I just want to say for parents that are working with their sons and daughters and are listening to this is to please talk to your son and daughter about the realistic financial responsibilities of college and what type of commitment you are realistically able to contribute. It's really disheartening when students go through this process for 1 or 2 years to learn in the end that if they don't get the scholarship, they're not able to go. If they know that up front, they can work towards those scholarships, work towards options in schools that will be good financial fits. That is very important, I think, to start that conversation early. And also for any of you that are undocumented as students, know that you are welcome at Oakton Community College and many colleges and universities across the country. And so please don't be afraid to go to college because you're undocumented. We want you at our colleges. We want to help get you educated.
Awesome. Those are, I think, all phenomenal points, and a lot of which our office tends to emphasize over the years, and it's always wonderful to hear that being echoed from colleagues and friends. And so thank you so much for all of you for joining in on this webinar and sharing your insights. I know you'll definitely have plenty of students both apply, reach out, consider, ask questions, and all of your awesome resources, as well as your colleagues and staff as well too. So before ending, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes from the New Trier perspective. So obviously, if you're watching this video, you found it on either the Canvas page or our website. There will be some other webinar format videos available this summer, a few right around the corner. So we're going to be doing a series of essay writing workshop webinars hosted by our office, and also with some guest speakers as well, to help students get started on considering what they might want to write about in a college essay if they have that required for their applications. We're also going to be doing some work specifically towards the common applications, and so many institutions use that system as well, just to have students be able to get a bit of a head start when that opens and is live at the beginning of August too. And then lastly, as I mentioned, I'm one of 8 post-high school counselors, and all of us do have summer hours as well too during varying weeks of the summer. So in short, feel free to reach out via email or get connected with our department assistant, and we can get some time in the books either to chat via email, chat virtually, whatever it might be. Here to help as always. And a huge thank you again to all of our participants in this webinar. The work you guys do is invaluable, and looking forward to seeing you all, and hopefully sooner than later. So thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.